Ha! Can't think of a tune to start with here. Alright, let's see what happens. New key. I'm not entirely convinced that this is working. I'm not seeing anybody, and it seems like my stream is... Oh, let's do this. Try this again. Something here is not quite right, I can tell. It says starting, but it doesn't say streaming. Okay. Okay, there we go. Now I can tell that it's working. Sorry for the delay, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. A little bit of a technical difficulty this morning. Now I'm out of tune. Good enough for now. Here's a tune called Dry and Dusty. Hi, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Got people coming in from all over the world, and once again, it's always great to see. We've got London, Skye, Germany, and another London. Hope I'm coming through all right. I was having a little bit of technical difficulties getting things running, but I hope everything's loud and clear and in sync and things like that. Dylan says he's got to leave. He's got an appliance delivered. Well, I hope it comes smoothly and is I hope it treats you well over the years. Always good to get something new. All right, there we go. That's a mandolin that actually sounds in tune. All right, good morning, everyone. Oregon, California. Great. Vermont. Excellent. Well, if you're new here, I see some familiar names already, but if you're new here, welcome. This is MandoLessons Live, the weekly kind of live stream that I do. It's always on Saturdays at noon Eastern Standard Time. Thanks for joining us. The way these things work is I play some tunes, but mostly it's a great time if people have questions about anything that I do, musically, mandolin related, that sort of stuff. I'm always happy to answer questions. I'll take requests. Mostly I'll fulfill requests that are not copyrighted so I don't get in trouble with the YouTube police. But I can also only do them if I know them. You can request them and I'll either know it or I won't know it. I might try to make it up. You never know. But in any case, try to keep this fast-paced and fun. Can I do Home Sweet Home in D? Yeah, I can probably do something like that. It's a great tune. I kind of know it more as a banjo tune. But it's a great tune, and I can sort of make up something on the fly. Like I said, I'll try to make things up. A little bit of Home Sweet Home. Something like that anyway. Home Sweet Home, great kind of, I think of it as kind of a banjo tune, but people play it in all kinds of different settings. All right, Vermont checking in. See, catch up with the chat here a little bit. All right, James says, I've been learning shove that pig's foot a little closer to the fire today. Any chance we can hear that? Definitely. A great old-time tune. in the key of G. I was in tune for a little bit. That'll do for now. Yeah, Pig's Foot. Great old time tune. It's on my website. I don't have old Home Sweet Home on my website. I also don't really know it too well, but shove that Pig's Foot a little further in the fire. Great old time tune in the key of G. Sounds like this. Shove That Pig's Foot. On my website, great tune, highly recommended if you don't know. It's a pretty common old-time tune, at least around here. I think kind of widely distributed throughout places that play old-time music. Definitely one of my favorites. All right, let's see. Jamie asks, sorry I skipped over you. Do I have any of my own tunes that I especially like to play? Yeah, I do. I've got I'll play a tune here, a tune I wrote called Cosimo's Flight, which I wrote after reading a book called The Baron in the Trees by Italo Calvino. It's a great story about a kid who has a disagreement with his parents, a young boy at like the age of 8 or something. I think has something to do with not wanting to eat the dinner that he is served, and he has a disagreement with his parents and says, "I'm gonna go climb a tree and never come down." And he doesn't. He never comes down. He spends the rest of his life, many years, up in the trees, kind of reigning the upper canopy, ruling over the upper branches of these trees, and kind of goes through all of his adventures and things. And so I finished that book and I wrote a tune called Cosimo's Flight. I don't have it recorded anywhere. Oh no, it is. It's on if you go to MandoLessons and then go to like the shop page, there's a couple albums by my band Velocipede. And I have it on, it's on there. I recorded it on our second album. It's the colored album called Hunt the Squirrel. But here's a little solo mandolin version of it. Cool. Jamie says he teaches Calvino. Yeah, it's really, really wonderful story. I highly recommend it. But the tune sounds like this. It's a nice, it kind of highlights my taste for kind of chord melody stuff. It's got a fairly simple melody, which I'll play through once, and then I'll kind of add in some chords at the same time, which I really like to do. Oh, sorry, I'll start with just the melody. Here it is with the chords. It is the Barrat Cosimo's Flight, named after a book by Italo Calvino called, or it's not named after, but inspired by a book by Italo Calvino called The Baron in the Trees. All right, back to the chat here. Uncle Bobby says, I have a real basic question on the mechanics of strumming. I keep having trouble on up strums. Can you break it down? So I'm not sure if you mean in a scale or in a chord, but I'll sort of go over both a little bit because I think they're both important. If we're thinking about a scale, I think getting that pattern in your right hand of down up is really important, and really working on getting your ups, at least as an exercise, to sound just as strong as your downs. The upstrokes are always going to be a little weaker because you're kind of fighting gravity and it's a less natural movement. But working not too fast, just kind of on a scale or something where you can really just work on getting the sound of your instrument to sound as good as you can. Getting your upstrokes to be nice and strong and in time. And you can even work on both. So then, rather than trying to get them to sound the same, you can also try to get your upstrokes to sound a little weaker, to just sort of emphasize the sort of downbeat. And the other end of the spectrum is make your upstrokes louder and kind of stronger than your downbeats. Like that. And you're not always gonna be doing all three of those things every day, but it's a good practice to do, so that if you run into a situation where you need a strong upbeat, often it becomes sort of like a rhythmic syncopation. those, kind of that kind of syncopation kind of coming out of nowhere. A nice strong note is great for your upbeats. In terms of chords, which might have been your question, I think chords naturally have a softer sound on the upstroke. So often, if I'm playing this sort of progression, chord pattern, there's really not a whole lot of upstroke that I'm doing. Slowed down, it really sounds more like this. It's really just like one note or a couple notes on the high end. Down, 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 up, down. Just a quick little up on one or two sets of strings is all you really need. And really, a lot of the time, especially if I'm playing guitar, I think of that strum as sort of a guitar-style strum pattern. And if I'm really, if I'm playing guitar, I can go a whole night without ever playing an upstroke on a guitar. I'll just... It's all down. Down, 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 down. And really kind of the bass line and sort of that groove is really what keeps me interested in, kind of is what kind of creates that nice driving sound. In terms of kind of jig, down, up, down, again, the up is a weaker beat, which is sort of why that repeating down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down pattern is important. So you get this like down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. And it really is weaker. So you can really kind of think of it as like strong, weak, strong, strong, weak, strong, strong, weak, strong, strong. I think, staying nice and relaxed in your right arm, super helpful. Doing it nice and slow. I hope this is helping answer your question. That's where I start with, okay, full chord upstrum. I see. So that's something that doesn't really happen a whole lot, at least in kind of a lot of the styles that I play. Every once in a while, I'll do this sort of like sweep thing, like, and really what that kind of is it feels, think of your arm kind of pulling back towards you a little bit more. But ultimately, kind of in day-to-day stuff, I don't ever do that kind of full chord upstrum. But occasionally it's nice to kind of like, but really it's kind of like a pulling back across the strings. It's a very different motion, kind of tipping my hand out a little bit and kind of pulling back towards my chest a little bit. It's a good way to also like potentially scratch up your instrument, which I'm personally not too worried about. But if you don't want to scratch your instrument, be careful. Kind of go in that direction because it's liable to end up hitting the top of the instrument. All right, back to the chats here. Where are we? Jamie says, last week I learned Silver Spear, and today I'm working on Miss McLeod's. Silver Spear uses 4th and 5th frets. Really threw me. I kept hitting the wrong note for days. Yeah, that's the thing about tunes, especially I find, if I'm trying to learn a tune and I mix something up right at the beginning, even if I know it's wrong, my brain's like, well, you did that first, so that must be the right way to do it. And then you sort of spend the next couple weeks kind of retraining your brain to not do the first thing your fingers happen to hit. It's kind of a classic problem in learning tunes, so I feel your pain. All right, let's see. James says, any thoughts on chromatic walks and where you might use them? They seem to be common in blues and jazz, but do they pop up anywhere else? Yeah, so in terms of, I think, chromatic stuff can be really helpful. If you're, especially if I'm assuming you're talking about kind of soloing over some chord changes. So if you got some chords that are just sort of like the G, then C, then to D, then back to G, something, just like 3 chords. So what you're going to be doing as those chords are going by in your head, kind of keeping those chords running in your brain so you don't get lost is a helpful thing to do. And then from there, when you know that C chord is coming, you can kind of lead into that C chord by maybe like when that C chord finally hits, making sure you're hitting a C note or maybe an E or a G note, which are the 3 notes in a C chord. And it's a nice way to kind of add a little bit of extra tension of like, whoa, this is going, like you hit some chromatic notes, or like a little chromatic run, and it's like, wow, this is getting weird, what's happening? And then you have that nice landing moment of, okay, there's that note. So if I'm playing in G, here comes my C. So kind of G stuff. And then right there, a little walking line. A, B flat, B, C. And what you can often do is just sort of, if you have a scale, you know, you might do this. Kind of walk up that G scale to the C. Instead of doing that, we're just starting on the A note and replace, so instead of G, you have an A, and instead of an A, you have a B flat. So then you get, so you get this sort of tension of like, oh, this is really chromatic and weird, and then it pops out on that C just as the chord players are hitting that C downstroke, and it's like, oh, that's what was happening. So here's a G, and then the C to C, and then to D. That's a nice thing, you know, if you're in the key of G and you're going from your 4 to your 5 chord, your C to D chords, you have that, you just have a half step in between. So if you're in the key of C, if you're on the C chord, so you can kind of get this like, maybe you have this C arpeggio, and then you go up that half step, C arpeggio, C sharp arpeggio, D arpeggio. So going from that C to D, or kind of walking that little C double stop chord up to 3 and 4, 4 and 5, things like that. I hope that is helpful. Henry's got a sleeping roommate, so good. Thank you for not waking them up. Don't want to get in trouble with your roommate. Let's see. Final Girl 11 says, speaking of upstrokes, I have trouble when I'm changing strings and pick direction. Any advice? Yeah, so that's a really common place. You are totally not alone in that sort of pick direction kind of mix-up area, because it is. You're changing two things at once. You have pick direction and string. So what's really important is to get into your head sort of the universal pick direction. I'm just noticing I'm starting to break up a little bit here. I'm going to just change a setting here real quick. Let's try to even things out for us all. Wow. Okay, I will, let's see. I seem to be breaking up on my end pretty quickly here. I'm just going to restart my system. I'll be right back. Don't go away. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully I won't be breaking up in the same way here. We'll find out. But apologies for the short interruption. Okay, so yeah, talking about pick directions here. Getting your pick direction worked out so you really have a solid sense of down, up, down, up, down, up. Because what's going to happen, that particular pattern is never gonna break up. It's always gonna be, you know, if you're thinking of 8 notes in a measure, it's always gonna be down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So if you're missing a note, it's going to be down, up, down, down, up, down, 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 up, down, down, up, down, up, down. Sorry, that was a bad example. But your pick direction. So check out on my website. I have a couple lessons. One in the technique and fundamentals section. One on kind of pick direction for reels. I think that could be helpful to watch if you haven't already. Just sort of, the pattern's always going to be there. So another thing you can practice is some kind of like cross-picking patterns where you just like hold the G chord and make sure your right hand is always going down, up, and then just hit a bunch of strings. Make sure you're always doing down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Easier said than done. Or, you know, little patterns where you're going down on the D string, up on the G. That's often the mix, a common mix-up point. It's sort of down on the D, up on the G. So getting, you know, the nice thing about the mandolin, but also one of the tricky things, is that pick direction is really constant. It's always going to, if you're in a reel, it's always down, up, down, up. If you're in a jig, it's always down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. So getting those patterns in your head and forcing your right hand to always keep those patterns, which can take a little bit of time, but is a worthwhile sort of project, I think. All right, moving on. Deuceable? I don't know how to say your screen name, sorry. Asks, when playing melody lines, do you use any rest strokes at all, or are you always using free strokes? So I think I'm not great with the terminology here, but I think what you're talking about is sort of rest strokes being going through one set of strings and then landing on the next. Which I do. I do use rest strokes. I don't really know enough about my own playing to know exactly when I use them. It's hard for me to sort of address, kind of figure out in my own playing in real time when what I'm doing, but I know that I do use rest strokes at times. I think it's good to sort of have the feeling in your right hand as if each pick direction was a free stroke, because you know that sort of helps keep that down, up, down, up, down, up pattern, at least in your head and in your kind of muscle memory in your right hand. But I think also there's a certain amount of nice kind of tone and sound that you get out of the instrument by kind of following through that string right into the, like, hitting the next set of strings over. Oops. It's hard to do when I'm thinking about it. I hope that's helpful. Okay, let's see. Moving on. Okay, do you keep the pick perpendicular to the strings while upstrumming? I don't. So the general pick direction to the strings that I use is my pick is sort of parallel to the floor. You know, it's flat out this way. That when I'm holding it, it's kind of hard to, you can't really see it, but ultimately, you know, it's flat to the floor. And the mandolin itself is tipped up a little bit. So kind of I have this leading edge going through the strings, and that happens even when I'm on an upstroke, kind of downstroke or upstroke or full upstroke. It's always got that angle, and that just helps it kind of roll through the strings. It's the difference between this sound. So this is pick flat to the floor and strings flat to the floor. You get a lot more pick noise versus tipping the instrument, but again, pick is flat, gives a leading edge through the string. Flat. So the Pelican asks, how do you work up a break on a slow tune like all good times are past and gone? So, darling, don't you weep no more. I can't quite remember how I can only remember the chorus of that tune. But what I would do, so that's all I can remember that tune right now, but I'll use that little bit. So starting with the melody, so if I was going to take a solo over just that little bit of the tune, all the good times are past and gone, little darling, don't you weep no more. My first thing to do would be figure out the melody. Or whatever the melody, I might not have that exactly right. Might not be thinking the same tune as you. But, and then from there, you can sort of start working on your right hand, pick direction sort of stuff. Kind of getting a shuffle or kind of a constant wooga chucka. Which is still just the melody, but kind of down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up the whole time. If you know the chord progression underneath that you'd be playing chords to, you can add that in. So you have like C, then G, G, D, G. So you kind of start in the C chord. So you put a C chord underneath that. Then G, D, and you start to fill it out. You can also add some sort of double stop. But I think the most important thing, at least the way that I tend to play, is starting with the melody. Because, it's like, it's a wide open world if you kind of start with nothing in particular in your mind. But I think just by starting with the melody and sort of using that as a jumping off point. That particular one right there got kind of far away from the melody, but I always tend to like start there. It makes the solo more recognizable, makes the break more recognizable. It makes kind of the listening experience a little more close to home, which I think is important for listeners and even people you're playing with. So you don't if sometimes if I go like way off into the stratosphere on a solo, I can sort of confuse people that I'm playing with. I'm like, oh wait, where are we? Like, are we still in the chorus here? Are we like, is he over the verse now? I don't know where he is. And then that sort of like adds some doubt into them, and then they start playing something else. So I think keeping things grounded in a certain way is helpful, just kind of for all involved. But my big thing that I always say over and over is just start with the melody, add a little bit of right hand in, maybe some double stops, and you're good to go. Cheyenne says, can you talk about doing variations and personalizing tunes? Yeah, that's a great kind of segue, because, I think... let me just get your question back in my head. Yeah, so, starting with the melody is a huge thing. Knowing the chords. I think in terms of personalizing a tune, the more you can know about a tune, the more more number of times you've actually like repeatedly played that tune, it's going to kind of naturally get personalized by you. You're going to feel more comfortable kind of tinkering with the tune, tinkering with the melody, maybe adding in a melodic variation or adding in some double stops. I think if you can take a tune and play it 10 times through, A, B, B, 10 times through, that's probably going to take 10 minutes, maybe less, depending on how fast you're playing. It usually takes like maybe at like 120 beats per minute, 32 bars is going to take, I don't know. It's like 30 to 40 seconds, depending on how fast you're going. If it's a slower tune, up to a minute. So that's a long time to just play one tune. And if you know it at the beginning, and you play it 10 times, you might even get like a little bit bored of like, okay, here it is again, I'm gonna do it again. And you might just like, out of the sake of like not wanting to do the exact same notes over and over, you might just try something. You know, if you can get into that zone of like, it's a great thing I love to practice is like, just sit down with a tune and play it as long as you can stand to play it. You know, don't like get super sick of it and never want to play it again, but just spending that time with the tune, you know, makes it that much easier to not get lost, to, you know, when you fall off the tracks, which is kind of inevitable to sort of like fall off the tune a little bit and be like, whoops. The better you know that tune, the more time you've spent with the tune, the quicker it is to get back on, and that sort of creates their own little variations themselves. So like so like something like that, first time, just kind of eighth notes and quarter notes. And then we're kind of spicing up those quarter notes. Kind of using that as an exercise. You know, anytime there's quarter notes, see if you can fill that in with little bits of scales or arpeggios. And what you'll notice is if you take a tune that's nice and it's got a lot of nice kind of variation between long notes and short notes, if you turn them all into short notes and it's just kind of machine gun fire eighth notes, you start to lose a little bit of sort of like the shape of the tune. Like I think a good example, at least for my own preferences, is Red Haired Boy. No, that's still Red Haired Boy. So here's Red Haired Boy. A nice combination of kind of eighth notes and quarter notes, short notes, long notes. You can turn it all into eighth notes. Which is cool, and it's a nice sound, but if you do that for too long, if it's just like straight eighth notes for A, A, B, B, it's just sort of like, it's so much information for our brains to take up that I personally like hearing like space. So sometimes you can, rather than add notes, you can add space. You know, like add in some space rather than adding in notes. So going both directions, like fill up the space with more eighth notes, take out notes and add more rests and space. Just kind of play with the form, but I think mostly spending a lot of time with the tune, letting your ear sort of take you away from the melody, and keeping your listening going while you're playing. So if you hit a note that's really kind of like sour, you go, ooh, like I didn't want to do that. But, you know, it's gone. It's already passed. It only lasted half a second. Most people probably didn't hear it. And if you hear a note that you really like, be like, hey, yeah, okay, I like that. Let's see if I can do that again next time that comes around. I think that's sort of how I approach variation and personalization of tunes. The better you know it, the easier it is. And it comes naturally, I think. Carl says, hello from Las Vegas. Do you have a good suggestion for learning the scales? Yeah, there's a great, if you want to learn all the scales, all 12 kind of major scales, and they have some PDFs on minor stuff, jazzmando.com has some exercises called FFCP, and it's, so the website again, jazzmando, all one word, .com. Great exercises called FFCP, talking about that kind of lead you through kind of some closed positions. Same shape. Different scales, kind of movable scale shapes. That's going to give you a good sense of like where all those scales are. I highly recommend that. That said, You know, if so, most of the time myself, I spend playing in a couple keys rather than all of them. I play mostly in D and G, occasionally in A and C, some kind of minor modes, because I mostly play fiddle tunes, which tend to be in those keys. I don't, occasionally, I don't play that much bluegrass anymore, but occasionally bluegrassers will play in the key of B or B flat. But those are kind of the big main keys. F occasionally, because that has more to do with sort of where it fits the singer's voice. But you know, even in bluegrass, I don't see a whole lot of people playing in E flat, D sharp, A flat, things like that. In jazz, yep. So it really depends on the kind of music you want to play. If you want to play jazz, you're kind of going into the flat keys. But you know, rather, it's great to know them all. But also, I think, you know, if you're just into playing tunes, then learning tunes is a great way to learn scales, because all tunes are is just sort of different permutations of scales run through with different patterns. And if you learn to play scales, often a lot of your, and then you try to improvise, a lot of your improvisation will come out as scales. Whereas if you learn more melodic music, like tunes, then your improvisation will come out more like tunes. You know, I've, at least for myself, I spent a long time kind of working on some of that FFCP stuff. And then I found that when it was time to take a solo, I was going... Whereas if I'm playing a bunch of tunes... and it comes time to take a solo, then it sort of comes out sounding like it could be another tune melody. So that's sort of, those are my thoughts on learning scales and how to do it. Definitely a worth, I'm not saying don't learn your scales. Great thing to know. But also maybe figuring out what scales that they are that you need to learn is a good step, rather than feeling overwhelmed by the need to learn all of them. All right, let's see. More chat. Can I talk about double stops? Maybe in something like Ragtime Annie. I can never remember Ragtime Annie. I'm bad at Ragtime Annie. But that's one that I want to add to the site, but I just don't know it really enough to get it up there yet. But yeah, so what I would suggest, if you haven't seen it, check out on my website, in the technique and fundamentals section, toward the bottom of the page, there's a whole series on adding double stops to your playing. I think, you know, I don't want to totally leave this question behind because it's a common one, but I did like a four lesson series on adding double stops to your playing, and it's sort of there's a particular sort of method that I use that I go through in those videos. But you know, I think knowing the melody, knowing what chords happen behind the melody, and then finding those chords on adjacent strings to the melody in your playing. So if you're playing like Flop-Eared Mule, you can sort of double stop on the open D and A strings. Really fills it out. You can also add in some fingers, add in that D on the A string. So I think going through those lessons on my website is going to be the easiest, because it's like ends up being like half an hour of information over there. So I'll probably leave that one there. Apologies that I don't have a succinct answer. It's just sort of a long, it's a long answer, but I do recommend those videos. Uncle Bobby says, how far does the pick go into the strings? Variable. I think experimenting with it. I think one thing that my friend used as a great example that I've really started saying myself is, imagine the pick going through the strings like using a big push broom on like a concrete floor. When you're using a broom, you're not pushing down into the floor really hard. It's just enough to like know that you're getting all that dirt. And, you know, if you don't push enough, you're going to leave dirt behind. If you push too much, it's just like, why am I using all this effort to push this broom into the floor? That's not what I'm after. So, you know, I don't think it needs to be much. I think I probably... There's no real good way for me to show this. Like, you know, somewhere around there. It's not much. If you get too much in, you're going to kind of catch on the strings more than you need to, I think. But mess around. Each one has a different... each one has a different... Each sort of amount... How much pick you put through the strings gives a different sound. Hope that's helpful. Dooda Dada says, do you know a cheap mandolin made in the USA? Well, it depends on... I don't know exactly what your price level is. I think the sort of the... There's a couple things that come to mind. There's is it now called Big Muddy? I think it's called Big Muddy mandolins. It's a guy, I think somewhere in the Midwest, that makes flat top mandolins that are beautiful. There's another guy that makes, and you know, I think these are all under $1,000. You know, they're not super cheap, but they're great value for the money. There's another guy. They come up on the Mandolin Cafe classifieds every once in a while. There's a guy that makes a lot of A-style oval hole mandolins that get great reviews. I've never played one, but they're often like $500, $600, $700. They're like $7 or $8, I think, new. Maybe, yeah, like $700 new, and sometimes come up used for around $5. I can't come up with his name right now. I apologize. But check out. That's a great question for Mandolin Cafe. People over there will know a ton more than I do about, you know, that sort of thing. Jamie says that I'm very accomplished, which I appreciate the kind words. If you have a weakness in your technique, an Achilles heel, so us mere mortals can feel a bit better. Yeah. So here's how it works: is I teach you all of the ways that I want to play myself, but I actually just break a lot of my rules all the time. You know, so I talk about how your pick direction should do this and that, but I'm always doing the wrong thing myself. You know, it's a constant battle. I am not a particularly well-disciplined mandolin player. I know what the rules are and what they should be. I'm just not very good at following them myself. And I've got tons of holes in my playing. I don't play in the key of B very well. You know, I'm like I said, like G, D, A, C, F. I'm pretty good. I can sort of hang in there in most keys, but I lose. You know, I can improvise pretty fluidly in a handful of keys, but once I get into, you know, I can sort of do whatever I want in the key. Well, not whatever I want. I still fall into my own ruts, but I'm pretty comfortable in, like, you know, those standard keys I was talking about. But as soon as I get to B, my improvisation gets much more conservative. I don't have the facility to really kind of go anywhere I want in the key of B. So I've kind of lost I played a lot of jazz in college and sort of was a little more fluid with that sort of stuff, but I've kind of lost it because I just play fiddle tunes these days. But yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. Time signatures are a big problem for me. I'm pretty much good in 4/4, 3/4, 6/8. I can hang in 5/4 a little bit and a little bit in 7/8, but not comfortably. So yeah, but it was good because there's always more stuff to work on, which is good. Do I know any slip jigs? I love slip jigs. I'll play a slip jig here. Let's see. Slip jig. That's one of my favorites. It's I don't know quite how to say the Irish name, Canabanbana, something like that. It's the fair-haired Canavans. It's on my website, I'm pretty sure. Let me just look at that real quick. It's let's see, lessons by tune type. Slip jigs. Yeah, the fair-haired Canavans. It's in the slip jig section if you search my fiddle tunes by tune type. I've got a couple in there. All great tunes that I love to play. The Butterfly, Fair-haired Canavans, Fox Hunter slip jig. The Kid on the Mountain is a great Irish 5-part tune, I think. Yeah, love slip jigs. I'd love to learn some more. So James asked, what's the difference between a jig and a slip jig? So a jig is in 6/8. Jiggity jiggity is sort of the phrase 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6, and a slip jig is in 9/8. So it's got three groupings of 3. So it's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 dugga da dugga da dugga da dugga da dugga da dugga ba ba da ba ba da da ba da ba. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 versus 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4. So it's a 9/8 tune. Really lovely. There's a lot of great slip jigs out there. The Snowy Pat. No, is that a slide? How's that? That's a slide. Never mind. Mike says, hello from Devon, UK. Been only playing 6 weeks. Used Bag of Spuds to practice. Got a Dunlop pick this week. Was using a guitar pick. The difference is amazing. Yeah, so I think maybe you're talking about these. I use, again, anytime I talk about gear, not a sponsorship or anything. I buy all my own stuff. These Dunlop Prime Tone 1.5 millimeter maybe is what you're talking about. I love them. Nice heavy picks. I think mandolins do well with heavier picks. It depends on the mandolin. Some kind of older oval hole mandolins I like with thinner picks, but these work great too. I think a great way to kind of experiment with some new sounds for not much money is get a handful of different size and shape picks and see what you like. But I'm glad you're enjoying the lessons, Mike. Thanks for joining us, and keep up the good work. Lonesome Fiddle Blues from the Pelican, a request. I wish I could. Great tune. Vassar really knows how to rip that one up. I don't know how to do that one. I think it's in D minor. Great tune. If you're unfamiliar with Lonesome Fiddle Blues, anybody, check it out. Great tune. But unfortunately, I don't know it. Yeah, it's probably my foot tap. So, got my foot tapping. Just got this mic here. Hope that wasn't too loud for you. Cool. Checking up on the chat here still. Snowy Path is it a slip jig? It is a slip jig. Yeah, so I think Alton did that one. I don't think they wrote it. Maybe they did. That might be a modern tune. I've always thought it was traditional to some extent, but maybe not. It is a little weird, but it's a beautiful tune. One of my favorites. Cool. Hello from Thailand. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I'm sure it's 1 a.m. in Thailand. Thanks for joining us at such a late hour. Dixie Hoedown, another one that I can't really make my way through. Oh yeah, no problem, Uncle Bobby. glad to answer questions. That's why I love doing these, seeing what people are working on, what they're having trouble with. I'll do a bluegrassy tune because I'm totally off the ball and can't fulfill any of your requests, Pelican. How about that, whatever that tune is? Bill Cheatham, great bluegrass tune in the key of A. And then I might head on my way. It's a little after 1, but play this one more tune for you. Bill Cheatham. I believe it's on my website. So yeah, a little bit of Bill Cheatham there. Great bluegrassy tune in the key of A. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Joining me, joining us. There's tons of people here, and it's great to get you all together. Thanks so much for coming this week. Come back next week. Always 12 p.m. noon Eastern Standard Time on Saturdays. Oh, cool. Awesome. Snowy Path composed by Mark Kelly of Altan, however you say that name. Cool. Excellent. That's good to know. Always happy to learn about tunes. But cool. Yeah, thank you all so much. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye.